observance in the liturgical year of many Christian denominations lasted for a period of approximately 6 weeks leading up to Easter. In most Western denominations, Lent is taken to run from Ash Wednesday to Maundy Thursday or to Easter Eve. Lent itself is derived from the Anglo-Saxon words Lenten, meaning spring, and Lenten-tid, which literally means not only springtide, but also was the word for March, the month in which the majority of Lent falls. Since the earliest times of the Church, there is evidence of some kind of Lenten preparation for Easter. The traditional purpose of Lent is the preparation of the believer through prayer, penance, repentance, almsgiving, and self-denial. Its institutional purpose is heightened in the annual commemoration of Holy Week, marking the death and resurrection of Jesus, which recalls the events of the Passion of Christ on Good Friday, which then culminates in the celebration on Easter Sunday of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. During Lent, many of the faithful commit to fasting or giving up certain types of luxuries as a form of penitence. Lent is traditionally described as lasting for 40 days in commemoration of the 40 days which, according to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus spent fasting in the desert before the beginning of his public ministry, where he endured temptation by Satan. Once the 40 days of Lent were established, the next development concerned how much fasting was to be done. In Jerusalem, for instance, people fasted for 40 days, Monday through Friday, but not on Saturday or Sunday, thereby making Lent last for 8 weeks. In Rome and in the West, people fasted for 6 weeks, Monday through Saturday, thereby making Lent last for 6 weeks. Eventually, the practice prevailed of fasting for 6 days a week over the course of 6 weeks, and Ash Wednesday was instituted to bring the number of fast days before Easter to 40. The rules of fasting varied. First, some areas of the church abstained from all forms of meat and animal products, while others made exceptions for food like fish. Second, the general rule was for a person to have one meal a day in the evening or at 3 p.m. The Presbyterian Church of the USA defines Lent on their website as a period of 40 days prior to Easter, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the grave. The word Lent comes from the Latin word for lengthen, because the days of Lent occur during the springtime of the year when the daylight hours increase. The period consists of 40 days because the number 40 has special biblical significance. Moses and the people of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years. Jesus was tempted in the desert for 40 days. Since the days of the early church and the decades and centuries after the death and resurrection of Christ, Christians have regarded the period of Lent as a time for repentance and reflection. It is invariably marked by fasting, by giving up something during Lent, sweets, the sport page, or in my case, video games, and by taking on such habits that will increase one's devotion to Christ. I will now turn the sermon over to Jack Brownlee to discuss more modern-day applications of Lent and their meaning.
And from reading on my own. I have some ideas about what Lent might represent to me now, and I'd like to share that with you. Maybe some of you know all about the season of Lent and where it comes from, and maybe some of you are learning new things today like me. As a Reformed tradition, the Presbyterian Church has in the past not often recognized Lent, but this seems to be changing. As we start to make Lent a bigger part of our church calendar, I think that we can find some ways to make Lent a special time and to make a difference in our lives. In the New Testament reading this morning, Luke chapter 4 talks about how Jesus was led by God into the desert, where Satan tempts him at least 3 times. Jesus resists his temptation and teaches 3 very important lessons. The first is that man does not live on bread alone. The second, worship the Lord and serve him only. And the last lesson is, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Jesus teaches us 3 of the Bible's most important lessons, all while being tempted by Satan. That takes some skill. Just like Jesus, we all get tempted sometimes, but unlike Jesus, we often fall for it. Some people give things up for Lent, and this can be a way to learn to overcome temptation, just as Jesus did. By choosing to give up something from our lives during the 40 days of Lent, we are symbolically putting ourselves in his shoes. If you're going to give up something for Lent, make sure it is something that will make a difference in your life. I think lots of people will look over their lives and pick a bad habit and decide, hey, this Lent thing is a great excuse for me to cut out on something I probably needed to a long time ago. I'll cut down on my caffeine, and they quickly start counting the days until Easter, and they can celebrate by drinking an entire 2-liter bottle of Sundrop. There's not much point in just giving up something random for Lent. You won't find yourself closer to God because you gave up soda or stopped eating carbs. God wants us to be happy, and things like TV, the computer, and sports are fun. But if we use these things so much that they interrupt our relationship with God, then we need to give them up, or at least use them a lot less. What we should choose to give up is something that is coming between you and God and keeping you from having a stronger relationship with Him. For example, watching too much TV can keep us from getting out into the world to experience it, where we can spend time with others and spread God's word. It doesn't even have to be something physical like TV or the internet. For example, if you are someone who tends to worry a lot about things that aren't just as you wish they were, you could commit yourself to try your hardest during Lent to catch yourself before you dwell on things for too long. If you give up something that is coming between you and God, then that's a thing that would be useful to give up. One way to look at it might be that it isn't so much about giving something up as it is making room for God, prayer, and church, things that will get you closer to Him. If we make room for God in our lives during Lent, then we should also take that opportunity to fill the space up with new things that will make our relationship with Him stronger. Instead of watching lots of TV, take that time to start a new Bible study or volunteer at school or shelter. If you are giving up worry or negative thoughts, try praying during those times instead. It may be hard and it may be a struggle to overcome temptation over what you have given up, but we can spend time praying and talking to God about it. I bet we find it a lot easier to handle the giving up part if we focus instead on what we are doing to be closer to God. And we would probably all be less likely to just go back to our old ways once Easter comes around. My challenge for you all this Sunday as we begin this Lenten season is to try and use these 40 days to make a difference in your life by giving up things that are coming between you and God. If we all give up one thing, just one thing that comes between us and God, and we fill that space instead with something that strengthens our relationship with Him, we would find ourselves a whole lot closer to God. Let's see how we do.